Hi guys, it's Jeanette Wilde. So I'm going to start a series on building a junk journal. And throughout the series, we'll have different things that can be used in just about any project you have. Many things could even be used to create a card if you're a card maker. Scrap of pages if you're a scrapbooker. A mini album if you're a mini albumer, is that a word? But specifically, I'm going to be building a junk journal. And I think junk journal is a bit of a misnomer for me. I prefer to kind of think of it as a repurposed journal. Junk journal came about because the idea is that a lot of people use like junk mail, and so because you call it junk mail, it's been called a junk journal. I don't know as I use lots of old envelopes or used envelopes, but still I think of it more as repurposing. So for instance, if I buy a book and tear it apart, the book was not junk. So I don't like that word, but so that's what we're going to build. But we'll call it a junk journal because everyone knows that. So whenever I start a journal project, anything, obviously there's a series of things you want to kind of consider before getting started. And I'm sorry, my camera might, because when I try to force it to focus, it just doesn't want to do it. So I have to let it do the autofocus or it will not be in focus at all. So sorry about that. The first thing is obviously your theme. And to me, there's two different types of themes. The first is a very specific theme. For instance, I will be making a Titanic journal. The Titanic set here is by Relative History, and you can get everything that you see on this page and more on the Relative History site. And it is a very specific theme, right? Titanic. There's no nebulousness about it. And what's other specific themes? Say Christmas, Easter, maybe a baby journal, something to give to someone who's having a new baby, that kind of thing. It's got a very specific theme. The other theme, or combination of themes, I'm going to call it just eclectic. And what I mean by that is the theme of it is that it has no theme. But still, if you think about it, let's say I tend to like old things. Okay, I'm a very big history buff. And so I like vintagey, old kind of feeling. And let's say I'm making an eclectic. It's not necessarily a specific theme like Titanic. It's just a bunch of things that I want to make and put into a journal that is all vintagey. If in the middle, and sorry, my husband is working on our kitchen, so bang, bang, bang. But I wanted to go ahead and record this. If in the middle of this vintage journal or anything that I'm making, all of a sudden I have a picture of a character from a 1980s cartoon, it's like, stop the brakes. What is this? That doesn't fit, right? Now, my eclectic journal could be that my theme is really random, which means one page I might have something old, next page I have something new, next page back to old, something new, something borrowed, something blue, right? But that's still a theme. If I'm going in a generic theme of like just vintagey old and I suddenly throw in something that's totally random, it's jarring, right? But if my theme is to be totally random, then the fact that I turn one page and it's old, that won't bother. That's my theme then, again. May you think your theme is to have no theme, but no, my theme then is random. That's my theme. So I put those kinds of things in like the eclectic. It's not a specific concept like Titanic, but it still is a collection of some kind of sets of things. I hope that makes sense. So that's my first consideration. And here I'm doing my Titanic. The next thing, strangely enough for me, is size. And I think that's really important to consider off the bat, because it will help you decide on what materials you're going to use, what things you absolutely cannot use. If I'm wanting to make a mini book, 12 by 12 paper it's not going to really work for a mini book. That kind of thing. So if a traveler's notebook, I might consider, will whatever it is that I have fold or fit nicely into that size construct of a traveler's notebook. And sometimes your size dictates what you're going to use, and sometimes what you're going to use dictates your size. But still, considering what kind of size you're going to use is very important in moving forward. The third thing, I think, is something that we don't always necessarily specifically sit down and think through, but you do inherently do it regardless, which is a color palette. So for instance, again, here we're making a Titanic, and we're going to use this set of papers. It dictates a color palette, right? And what I've done is, this was an idea from another beautiful designer friend of mine, Louise Heinzel. And she actually showed really dictating and, really putting down your color palette. And you don't necessarily have to do this. She was showing how to do it. And so I thought I wanted to do it because I really wanted to make sure that the things that we went through in this series, were nicely contained, so I didn't go off some weird tangent. I thought showing you, the color palette that I'm using would be useful. And you can see I've taken this directly out of the papers that I've chosen. Now, is it necessary to fully, make a little swatch like this? No. Half the time, actually probably 90% of the time, you do it intuitively. You do it naturally as you're building what you're building. And it, as you're putting things in, so for instance, here's my color palette. I have reds, yellows, and blues. If I grab an element, think, ooh, I want to add this, and it's a lime green, right? Yeah, when I'm turning my pages in my book and all of a sudden the whole page is lime green, it's going to be jarring. It's that you messed up. Did you mean to put that page in there? Something's wrong. So when you're building your item, it's not necessarily that you've thought of your color palette beforehand, but it is in your mind as you're building. But it may help when gathering whatever you're going, all the different things that you're going to use for your project, to actually have a color palette in mind. Because if you're like me, I gather all my stuff together, and we'll talk about that in a second. And I sit down, I think, okay, I look at, kind of what I want to do. I may have picked either, for instance, here I have a set of papers that I'm going to use. Maybe in the next project I have an image, a picture, and I'm going to build everything off of that. I'm going to use that as I gather all my stuff to work on that project. So this is my color swatch. And so that's the three main things I think of when building a junk journal: the theme, the size, and the color palette. And again, I may not do that specifically, but it's intuitive when gathering your stuff. Okay, so moving right along, I'm going to go to, we've picked our theme, so let's think about size. For me, sometimes size can also be dictated by your cover. I know that sounds odd, but let's say you have some fabric that you know would just look gorgeous with, for instance, your Titanic set of papers. But it's only, you only have one piece of it, and it's only 5 by 12, for instance. Well, then you can't make your project, 12 by 12 or whatever, because it's just not going to work. So sometimes it's dictated, the size of your project can be dictated by the cover choice. In this case, so one of the things I often do is I have a box. Every time I gut a book, I keep the covers. And I think unless it's been completely disintegrated or it's just for me, it's just not anything I will ever use, I keep every single cover of the books that I've gutted. And I have a big box where I throw them all in. So when I start a project and I think, I think I want to have a hardcover, I want to use a book cover, an old book cover, maybe at some point I'll cover it up with fabric, but I'm pretty sure I want to use the book cover. Then I go to that box and maybe I'll, that's usually where I start first, is go to my box, go through all the covers, see if there's anything that really works with my paper choice. If I find something, I usually grab about 3 or 4 books unless one cover is just, perfect. Then I go back and say, okay, does this fit with the size that I've chosen? If not, and if it does, great, we can move forward. So for this project, I found, let me put these guys to the side, I found this book cover in my stash, and I just thought it was perfect because the color, let me show it, the color of it goes with my color choices. So it fits with the beautiful blues, very watery, and I really like this silver line around. So I'm, when I do my cover for my book, I think I'm gonna try and keep that line, and might cover this up with an emblem or something. But I really like this. This is perfect. And I really liked also that the spine is a nice width. If in the end, I never let the spine of a book dictate, whether or not I'm going to use it, because you can take that out. And part of this series, I'll show you whether I do end up doing it with this one or just show you with another cover. Don't worry about the size of the spine, but actually this one's pretty good size, so I'm happy with that. Now the nice thing again is, since I'm using my 12 by 12, this is a great book to use because I can get the full height. Mostly, you can see it's just a little bit. I've actually, when I decided you have to have an inside height, it's about 11.5. And of course, this is 12 by 12. So I'm losing just half an inch. And based on the papers, as you can see, there's the papers, I'm not losing any design within the papers by losing that half inch. So that works really nicely. Now you can see that it's also pretty wide. Typically when making signatures for a book, you take folded pages. Unless you have, it doesn't even fit in the camera. So unless you have really wide papers folded in half, that's just not going to meet the width of the book. So part of this series, I'm actually going to show you how to extend your papers so that you still have a folded page for your signature, but you have that full width of your book. So I liked everything about this cover, so this is the cover I've decided I'm going to use. And it's also in really good condition. There's a little bangy here, but I can easily, push that out. The spine is really good. I'm going to need to reinforce it, and I'll show you how I do that. The cover papers inside are actually pretty good, so I don't even, I won't need to cover those. But that's, simple. And there's nothing on the back, which is nice, so I don't have to worry about covering it up too much. So all in all, this is going to work really well as the cover of my book. So then, obviously, the next step is to start building the book. My next step in the process is to gather. It's kind of, what do you call it? A hunter-gatherer. I go through my stash and I start grabbing things. And I typically, I have a box. I call them my project boxes. You can use, another thing I use is, an envelope. Right, these are nice little plastic envelopes. They don't expand too much, but if I have some flat pieces, this works really nicely. A basket works, but I think of my craft room and my stash as a little store, and I go through my store and I go shopping. And I fill up my basket with anything that fits my theme and my color palette. So often I love that she has these really great cover sheets for her collections, because I can take this and I wander around my room and everything is here for me to hold against. So for example, I've got some, let me see, let me pull this one and this one and this one out. Okay. These are papers that I have colored, right? This one was done with alcohol inks. This one was done with, I believe, Kool-Aid, and then I added some shimmer sprays. I don't know if you can see that, but it's got a shimmer to it. And this one was done with some stencils and shimmer sprays and just plain ink sprays. So I have these three papers. I remember my color palette. Technically, this has got the blues in it, so that fits in my color palette. But is the green, I hold it up to my, is that green a little too jarring? I mean, obviously, the ocean waters, like for instance, you can see here, has some greens to it. So while it's not specifically, it's a color outside of my palette, it fits, right? I might not use this as a full page in my book, but maybe I can use this for journal cards, collaging, that kind of thing. So I grab this. I can look at this. Oh, that definitely fits my color palette. And, the other thing before I leave this page, there are watery elements, right? I have my little dots, but this stencils that I used when making this just have this wonderful kind of flowy feel to it. So not only does it fit nicely within my color palette, but it fits the theme, water, ocean, Titanic. So let me grab another piece to show you another example. Okay, so here is another example of items from my stash. Now, same thing. It's got the yellows, right? And the greens that are in here aren't too jarring with my color palette. So while it's not, blue, yellow, or red, the green doesn't jar, right, with the color palette that I've chosen. However, the stencil that was used to make this is very tree. I don't even, oh, this was actually given to me in a set of a Happy Mail. So I don't know what stencil was, if it was meant to be just crackle, but to me it gives off a very nature tree feel to it. Well, Titanic is not naturey trees, so while it might fit, it's really not, you know, it's not jarring. It doesn't, you know, if I turn the page and suddenly it's like, but it's not the best choice. If I, you know, was only given one choice between the two, I would fit this. It fits better with my color palette. It's not quite, this one's a little loud, while everything here, you know, is very muted. And nature tree thing is just, yeah, Titanic is not natures and trees. It's water. So that's, hopefully that kind of, that's my thought process when gathering material for my junk journals. Now, does that mean that this will get used? Absolutely no. As you can see, this box is filled with stuff, all kinds of things. So let's go through it. We have this paper. I'll look at that in a second. Here's some more papers that I made. Some Kool-Aid dyed papers. Again, blues. These were all done with, well, these were done with watercolors. So browns, kind of, I like the rusty look. So those fit. These are from a newspaper here in Germany from, I want to say, I have two sets of this newspaper. One was from like 1850s and the other one's was from the 1920s. So, or 1920s, 1900s. I want to say this is that one, probably. So, the costumes, the look, you know, the pretty women, very time-oriented. So, this fits, right? It fits the Titanic feel. This is not a newspaper. The article is not about Titanic, but the imagery fits, right? I found this little guy. It's just this guy. I have no idea what they're doing. To me, it looks like they're holding a funeral underwater. No clue what this is. But underwater, water, who knows? Might work, right? Don't have to use it, but I grabbed it just in case. I've got this little sticker sheet that is knots, nautical knots. So, yeah. Some bits, right, of blue paper that fit. When I was cutting, I've already cut all my paper to fit into my book. So when I was doing that, this is a leftover piece. These are some items that I was just playing with making, and I thought, yeah, they fit my color palette, the greens, the blue, or sorry, the yellows, the blues, and the reds. Again, may or may not use them, but they were in my stash. These are some pages that I was playing. You know, sometimes I just want to try out a technique that someone has shown me, or I just suddenly get the muse. So this was done. This is an old radio, a page from a radio manual, and it's a U.S. Army. Now it's dated 1952, but I kind of thought, you know, the technical side of the Titanic, you know, and also when talking about the part where they sent the telegram, that just having the schematic might be a neat backdrop. May not get used, but grabbed it. I pulled out map pages, specifically ones that had lots of water on it. Lots of water. And then this one is of England. And since they took off from England, add that in. Here's some more. These were pages that I had folded for other projects, but then ended up not using. So they all fit my color palette, so I grabbed those. Some more play with paints and stencils. Fits my color palette. I had an old book. It's a advertisement book selling musical instruments. And so I pulled out the pages with the violins. Because whenever I think of Titanic, I always think of the band standing on the deck of the boat and playing the songs while the ship sank, and violins. So grab that. And then some old images from a book. Not the time period, but you have the oceans, nautical, so grab that. These are some little, it's a alphabet, but I don't know, I liked it, and I think it kind of fits that, the ornateness of the inside of the Titanic. Everything that they did fits into that realm. So I grabbed that. Same thing again, the ornateness of when they had the dinners and everything. So grab that. These are some receipts. Pretty old. These are 1937, so not completely the time frame, but this one's probably maybe a little too orange, but we'll see. It kind of fits. So I grabbed these blues, yellows. I like to use old receipts, especially in collaging. They work nicely. And these are 2 sheets from a children's music book. And again, it has the sort of the time period and dress. And of course the music. Again, I always think of them playing on that's another receipt, on the deck as it sank. And then from my aunt, she gave me her Muka books, and she did she made cross-stitch patterns. And so she had these books on stained glass. And so I went through those books, and specifically, and these are not the stained glass that was used in the Titanic, but of course in the ornate glass work throughout, you can see these amazingly beautiful stained glass elements all over. Well, first class. And so I thought, maybe some stained glass elements throughout the book. So specifically I picked these because of the boats. And again, this one with the boats. And then this one, because a lot of it's not specifically Art Deco, but it was leaning towards Art Deco. But this had the colors, right? The yellows, the reds, and the blues. So I think I picture this going this way as a pocket. Won't that be interesting? So, like I said, gather all my stuff. It may get used, it may not get used, but I like to have it all in one place so that when I go to make something, I can pull from my stash. I'm not, running around trying to find something. Of course, if nothing works for what it is that I want to make, obviously, go find something else. But I like to start that way. So, that's how we start. That's my process for starting a junk journal. So we're going to stop there, and then we'll pick it up again next time with another aspect. I haven't necessarily planned this out. I want to go organically as I build the book. So right now I'm showing you where I'm at the moment, and we'll come back and keep going. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you got questions, let me know, and I hope that this either inspires you or you learn something. And again, it doesn't have to be for a junk journal. It could be for whatever it is you're making. So see you again next time, guys. Bye-bye.